Hello guys, what's up? So today we are going to test 8 gigabytes RAM versus 16 gigabytes of RAM on Star Citizen. So let me just explain what this test is actually and why am I even doing it. Well, I thought that one of my RAM sticks died and I tested it and I concluded that it actually died. It doesn't really matter what it was, it didn't die, and I played my PC for around 2 days with only one stick of RAM with 8 gigabytes. So the Star Citizen ran like shit, and I was actually really surprised how bad it was running. So I wanted to test it out when I bought another stick of 8 gigabytes. I wanted to test it. So just so you know up in front, this is actually single channel versus dual channel, but that doesn't really matter because actually when you have 16 gigabytes of RAM, this game sometimes uses over 12 gigabytes of RAM. So the game will use more gigabytes of RAM if you actually have them. That means that 8 gigabytes of RAM, whether it be dual channel or single channel, isn't enough for this game. So 8 gigabytes isn't enough for this game. But anyway, I wanted to test it anyway. So let me just explain this a little bit further. What am I going to do? So I created one little test scene in the port Olisar, which is actually a port that you have a lot of stuff going on there, and there is usually a lot of people there, or a lot of ships, and a lot of stuff is usually going on there. And this is really good test, and this is actually a multiplayer test. So this is a real life test in real life scenario. This is not a test in controlled situation, or this is not a controlled test. So this is live multiplayer test. That's why I am doing 3 tests, and I do every test 3 times for each RAM. So basically I'm doing 3 tests 3 times, which is 9 tests for each RAM, and I'm going to show you the test right now so you will know what am I doing and to actually show you why am I doing it. So we are now inside the game, guys, and as I said, I wanted to do some easy and controllable test. So this is practically the simplest test that I came up with, and it's pretty simple test. So this is now literally the test. So I will now start benchmarking with fraps, and I will just do this. I will walk just like this every time, like this, walk here, and I will walk here to where you spawn the ship, up until this computer, always the same one. Then I will retrieve my Aurora, my little Aurora.
Your ship has been delivered to the following landing pad.
We need to wait a little bit. So it's at D7. So this place actually changes sometimes, but that's actually good because that's real life multiplayer test. So you can see how now it runs really smooth when we are playing on 16 gigabytes, and when we are playing with 8 gigabytes it stutters a lot. That is also one thing that I wanted to tell you also, that when you're playing with 8 gigs it always stutters. Sometimes even the ship doesn't appear immediately. You have a lot more pop-ins everywhere, and so this was literally the test. First test was from the room up to the computer, and the second test was from the computer up until here, until I come in the ship. And the third test, you will see now, I always do the same thing. So this whole port Olisar, you see, it has you see on that side there are like solar panels. So on the opposite side, I always go on that side first with the ship, like I will show you now. I always do this, so power up the ship. I always did the same thing. So I went here. Oh, not on this side. Seriously, seriously. Okay, okay. I will do it once again. Seriously. Bro, what the fuck happened? It wasn't on this side. It was on the other side. Oh man, what the fuck am I doing? Okay, yes, as always, I was running here. And also, you should know that now currently I am playing on high preset. Just so you know. With 16 gigabytes of RAM. Because I don't really care. I don't know if I can retrieve this other Aurora. Maybe that's something that they did.
Delivered to the following landing pad.
Yes, I'm gonna leave this fail inside. Yeah, I'm gonna leave. Okay, D7. Did something appear? Yes, I don't think nothing actually spawned. So I'm gonna spawn this because we have to wait for this because I destroyed it. I'm gonna spawn the Titan. Okay, okay, let's do it.
Your ship has been delivered to the following landing pad.
Yes, yes, yes. Just do it, please. D7, okay. It's the other ship, but it doesn't really matter for us now because I already did all of the tests with Aurora. Because, you know, you want everything to be the same. And yes, so here we go now. Okay, it was 7, was it? 7? Yeah, I think it was 7. Landing pad 7. Okay, so this is different ship, but it doesn't really matter what ship it is because. So the third part of the test, if I survive this time, will be this. You will see it now. And I didn't really play this game for a long time, and I really like the game. I really like the game because it's really unique game. There just isn't. I know that the game isn't polished. I know that the game basically took a lot to even come to this. Where is it now currently in development?
Thank you.
But you know, I really like the game, and there isn't anything similar. If you don't know what this game actually is, you can check a lot of other YouTube videos about this game where they explain a lot of the stuff in detail. You can basically travel through space, you can travel anywhere, and yeah. So this is the test. I always stand like here, and I will go through all of these circles and up until the end of the station, because that way when I go like this, everything has to load. Everything has to load, and it will text the RAM. Probably. I'm not, you know, scientist or an expert, but I think that's how it works. So this is always what I did, like this, and when I come until the end here, I just turn around where these solar panels are, and that's basically it. So this is, guys, the test, and I will now show you the results, and after I show you results, I will give you my last thoughts and analysis, basically. So I already explained what I did for benchmarks. These are all the benchmarks, which basically you record with Fraps. It has like benchmark option, and you just click a button and it just does a 30-second benchmark wherever you are in the game. So that's pretty much simple stuff. And now let's look at the results. So 16 gigabytes of RAM, as you can see here. The average of all the averages of 3 tests is higher, of course, than the 8 gigabytes of RAM average. And that's nothing unusual, but also max, all of the averages of the maxes, so the highest frame rates, not the highest average, but the highest frame rate that actually 8 gigabytes hit is always lower than the 16 gigabytes. And now you should know that 8 gigabytes RAM stutters a lot more, and I'm saying a lot. You can see here there is a lots of times where we actually hit 0 FPS, and that's because it takes time to load. Probably the RAM got, like, you know, filled too much and it has to reset or something, and you know, there is a lot more stutters. So as you can see here, everything is much smoother, and that's on high preset. So I actually tested everything on high preset and everything on low preset. So on high preset there is a lot stuttering here, and always on 8 gigabytes of RAM the maxes are lower, has lower highs, and on the 16 gigabytes of RAM maxes are higher. So averages are also, peaks are higher than the averages of 8 gigabytes of RAM, which is pretty simple. And as you can see on 16 gigabytes of RAM here, the lowest of all is 14 FPS. Everything, the lowest on the 8 gigabytes of RAM is 0. Maximum, lowest maximum, so the lowest of all this maximum is 48 for 16 gigabytes of RAM, and lowest of all maximums is 23 gigabytes of RAM. So what everything of this that I'm saying here actually means is that you have higher lows of maximum and you have higher lows on minimum in 16 gigabytes of RAM. That means smoother gameplay. So average, the lowest, is 31 FPS, and the lowest average here is 11.93. So this was a pretty bad result. This was like stuttering a lot. I remember this because this was my first test. And so that's for high. And one thing I have to mention is that high, basically, it took for 6 minutes and 20 seconds for 8 gigabytes to load the game, and it took 2 minutes less for 16 gigabytes of RAM to load the game. But when I was in game, one time load in game for when you are loading the server took 3.5 minutes, and one time it took 8 gigabytes of RAM almost 3 minutes, 2 minutes and 55 seconds. And this was anomaly because probably it also depends on the server, how long does it take to load the server. Because also one thing I have to mention here is all of the load times were faster, and I mean probably more than double the speed, you know, and with 16 gigabytes of RAM. I just wanted for guys that have 8 gigabytes of RAM and want to play this game, definitively everything will work faster with 16 gigabytes of RAM. I don't know why is that. It usually is because of the hard drive. I know that loading times are usually connected with hard drive speed, but in this case, on my PC, it wasn't the case. Everything was faster with 16 gigabytes of RAM. So you just have to know that. And of course, this isn't anything like unusual. When the preset was on low, graphic preset was on low, everything was faster. So as you can see here, the lowest average on the high was 11.93 FPS, and the lowest on the low graphic preset was 28. So pretty much almost 3 times faster was on low. And the average of all was actually not that much. So graphics preset on my PC on GTX 1060 wasn't really like that much of a difference in terms of FPS. So as you can see here, 28 is the average of all averages for 8 gigabytes, and for 8 gigabytes, averages of all averages was 33.7. So it may not look like much, but when it was on low graphics preset, everything ran smoother and there was a lot less stutters. So just keep that in mind. On 16 gigabytes of RAM, I'm going to tell you that I didn't really feel any difference between the high and low, and probably that's not because of the RAMs that much, because I think that that was mostly because of the PC. I'm not sorry, not PC, because of the processor and graphics card, not so much because of the uh, RAM. So yeah, guys, uh, this is pretty much it, and I just wanted to do this little test because I was really curious. Not that I'm really like, this is not like rocket science. It's basically pretty simple stuff, but I really wanted to check it out. And basically, the final thoughts of mine is that really 8 gigabytes of RAM is, I mean, just buy another stick of RAM, especially if you have single channel, so you have only one stick of RAM of 80 gigabytes. Just buy another one. Probably, most likely, multiple channels gives you boost in performance with everything else, if everything else was the same. So, thank you guys for listening, for me rambling here, and I guess I see you in the next video if I ever make one. So, peace out, guys, and have a good one.
Shield system online. Shield system offline. Hello and welcome aboard your Drake interplanetary craft. Your systems are online. Hydrogen fuel is at 100%. Shield system offline.